An Inquiry by Anton Chekhov. It was midday. Volderev, a tall, thick-set country gentleman with a cropped head and prominent eyes, took off his overcoat, mopped his brow with his silk handkerchief, and somewhat diffidently went into the government office. There they were scratching away. "Where can I make an inquiry here?" he said, addressing a porter who was bringing a tray full of glasses from the furthest recesses of the office. "I have to make an inquiry here and to take a copy of a resolution of the council." "That way, please. To that one sitting near the window," said the porter, indicating with the tray the furthest window. Volderev coughed and went towards the window. There, at a green table spotted like typhus, was sitting a young man with his hair standing up in 4 tufts on his head, with a long pimply nose and a long faded uniform. He was writing, thrusting his long nose into the papers. A fly was walking about near his right nostril, and he was continually stretching out his lower lip and blowing under his nose, which gave his face an extremely careworn expression. "May I make an inquiry about my case here, of you? My name is Volderev, and by the way, I have to take a copy of the resolution of the Council of the 2nd of March. The clerk dipped his pen in the ink and looked to see if he had got too much on it. Having satisfied himself that the pen would not make a blot, he began scribbling away. His lip was thrust out, but it was no longer necessary to blow. The fly had settled on his ear. "Can I make an inquiry here?" Volderev repeated a minute later. "My name is Volderev. I am a landowner." "Ivan Alexeyitch!" The clerk shouted into the air as though he had not observed Volderev. "Will you tell the merchant Volokov when he comes to sign the copy of the complaint lodged with the police? I've told him 1,000 times." "I have come in reference to my lawsuit with the heirs of Princess Gugulin," muttered Volderev. "The case is well known. I earnestly beg you to attend me." Still failing to observe Volderev, the clerk caught the fly on his lip, looked at it attentively, and flung it away. The country gentleman coughed and blew his nose loudly on his checked pocket handkerchief. But that was no use either. He was still unheard. The silence lasted for 2 minutes. Volderev took a ruble note from his pocket and laid it on an open book before the clerk. The clerk wrinkled up his forehead, drew the book towards him with an anxious air, and closed it. "A little inquiry. I want only to find out what grounds the heirs of Princess Gugulin. May I trouble you?" The clerk, absorbed in his own thoughts, got up and, scratching his elbow, went to a cupboard for something. Returning a minute later to his table, he became absorbed in the book again. Another ruble note was lying upon it. "I will trouble you for 1 minute only. I have only to make an inquiry." The clerk did not hear. He had begun copying something. Volderev frowned and looked hopelessly at the whole scribbling brotherhood. "They write," he thought, sighing. "They write. The devil take them entirely." He walked away from the table and stopped in the middle of the room, his hands hanging hopelessly at his sides. The porter, passing again with glasses, probably noticed the helpless expression of his face, for he went up close to him and asked in a low voice, "Well, have you inquired?" "I've inquired, but he wouldn't speak to me." "You give him 3 rubles?" whispered the porter. "I've given him 2 already." "Give him another." Volderev went back to the table and laid a green note on the open book. The clerk drew the book towards him again and began turning over the leaves. And all at once, as though by chance, lifted his eyes to Volderev. His nose began to shine, turn red, and wrinkled up in a grin. "Ah, what do you want?" he asked. I want to make an inquiry in reference to my case. My name is Volderev. With pleasure. The Gugulin case, isn't it? Very good. What is it then exactly? Volderev explained his business. The clerk became as lively as though he were whirled around by a hurricane. He gave the necessary information, arranged for a copy to be made, gave the petitioner a chair, and all in one instant. He even spoke about the weather and asked after the harvest. And when Volderev went away, he accompanied him down the stairs, smiling affably and respectfully, and looking as though he were ready any minute to fall on his face before the gentleman. Volderev for some reason felt uncomfortable, and in obedience to some inward impulse, he took a rouble out of his pocket and gave it to the clerk, and the latter kept bowing and smiling, and took the rouble like a conjurer, so that it seemed to flash through the air. Well, what people, thought the country gentleman as he went out into the street, and he stopped and mopped his brow with his handkerchief.